Hi, I'm Kristen Brunius, and this is the Overcomers Podcast. I am so excited for you to hear the stories of incredible people overcoming trials and turning them into triumphs. From everyday moms and dads to entrepreneurs to community leaders and beyond, you'll see how everyone has a story of overcoming, and those stories are what connect us all. Let's hop right in. Hey guys, Kristen Bruni here. Welcome back to the Overcomers Podcast. I am so glad you are here. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to these stories, and I hope that these stories bring God glory. So this week we have my pal Jonny. Jonny and his wife Chelsea were two of the first people that I met when we started attending our new church back in August, I guess. And they just opened their arms to us. They were super friendly, and I love when Jonny calls us peanut butter and jelly, because in a lot of ways we kind of came from opposite sides of things, as you'll hear in the episode. You'll notice that last week I wasn't here. My family and I took a week. We went to Colorado, so thank you for giving me some time to just recharge, if you would call skiing down a mountain recharging. But regardless, we had a great time as a family, and now we're back again. Excited for you guys to dive into this episode with Jonny. I think you're going to love his passion for Jesus, his love for Christ, and I love his rawness and his vulnerability to really just put it all out there and just share what God has done in his life. And so I'm excited for you guys to hop in. But before we do that, as you know, this podcast is self-sponsored with my business from Soul Naturals. And I actually, ironically, am drinking my favorite product right now in my favorite mug. So for those of you guys who don't know, Sedona, Arizona is my family's favorite place to travel. And that was the mug from there. And I am drinking Cinnamate. So let me tell you a little story about Cinnamate. So I've always struggled with really two kind of polar opposite things. Anxiety, which means you tend to be a little bit more high strung and worried and whatever, but chronic fatigue, which is like low energy and you're tired. And so a lot of times those things work, against each other. And what I have found over the years of trying different products and different things is that the products that help you to get a boost of energy actually will tend to make you a little bit more on the anxious side. And the things that calm down anxiety tend to make you more tired. Was I going to be anxious mommy and have lots of energy? Or was I going to be tired mommy but not be anxious? And in 2017, when I found Soul Naturals, to this day, my favorite product is Cinnamate. And the reason I love Cinnamate is because it gives me that great boost of energy and clarity and gumption to get things done. It actually also balances your blood sugar, and it's like a natural GLP-1 activator and all kinds of other sciencey stuff. But for me, what it did was it gave me great energy and clarity, but I didn't get anxious from it. Anyway, that's what this week's sponsor is my good old pal Cinnamate. Check it out at soulnaturals.com/Kristen. If you're new to the Soul Naturals world, you're missing out, but you can use my coupon code Kristen for $10 off. And it is soul, as in SOLLE, naturals.com/Kristen to get that $10 off. All right, let's hop right into the episode. Here I am back, and I have a super fun guest with us today, Jonny Zajac. I really hope I said your last name right. I even practiced before we got on. So really excited to have you here, Jonny. Jonny and I actually just met, I don't know, what was that, maybe 2 months ago? 3 months
February
ago?
6th.
Oh, and it's March something or other.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually hasn't even been that long. We ended up sitting next to each other, Dave and I, and the four of us just hit it off and heard a little bit of his story. And then we actually got on the phone and he started telling me a little bit more of the details. And I heard, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 minutes of it. And I said, you know what, just hold on. Just hold on. I just want you to tell everybody on the podcast. And so he's been kind enough to come on and tell us a little bit of what God has done in his life. And you just said something before we started recording, and I think people need to hear it. So your heart is to make Jesus famous. Is that what you said? And I love that. And I feel like that's exactly what your heart is you just want to tell everybody about Jesus. And so, But it wasn't always that way.
Mm-mm.
No. So why don't we start from the beginning? Chicago boy,
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah. So, as Kristen said, Jonny Zajac from the south side of Chicago. Have a younger brother and two older sisters, and was just raised in a really rough environment. I think my parents did the best they could possibly do with the hand they were given. And they both came from broken families and came from a lot of hurt and a lot of abuse, physical abuse and emotional abuse, sexual abuse. So they weren't even really ready to be like they never had the opportunity to be kids, let alone how to learn how to be parents to raise kids. So growing up, it was just rough. Like my parents struggled with everything of the world you can think of. And um, when I was 11, 10 or 11, just a string of like really, really bad things happened in a row, all within a couple months. Starting with my mom being diagnosed with fourth stage non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And then my father got hurt at work where like an industrial like vat that cooked, it basically cooked the fat out of meat. It overboiled and it burned from the back of his neck all the way to the back of his kneecaps off. And then we had a gas dryer that somehow malfunctioned and sparked, ended up like blowing up, burning our house down. And then the only grandparent I ever met was my mom's mom, and she died on Christmas morning. So that was literally October, November, December.
How old are
Um,
you?
10.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So my sisters are 2 and 4 years older than me, and they they left the house. They lived with like a half aunt that I had and boyfriends and just chased tried chasing a sense of like finding an identity because they didn't know how to be kids either. We like all we knew is that our life sucked. I mean that's what it came down to. Okay. So basically my parents were in like hospital beds next to each other. And getting rides to school and like electricity being shut off and like Christmas was after my grandmother died on Christmas. Christmas was not a holiday we celebrated.
No.
It was just terrible. So um, in this time, I grew really really close with my younger brother. His name's Jesse. Um, and when my mom got cancer, she lost all of her hair. And chemotherapy is almost worse than cancer in some cases. So it just destroyed her. She was completely bald. So my brother and I wanted to grow our hair out to make her a wig. And with the name Jesse, when he was younger, before he became like a tank, he was people wanted to call a boy a girl before they called a girl a boy.
Mm.
It made more sense. So he got Miss and Ma'am and Little Girl a couple times. So I thought to myself, we have to give you a name that is undoubtedly like masculine, that there's not a question even what you looked like. So it was Tank. We named him Tank, and 14 years later, he's still Tank. He's still
That's
that.
awesome.
So yeah.
Nobody's gonna call
So
a girl a tank, right?
no, no. So me and him grew really really close to this because we were kind of all we had. Like our parents were literally fighting for their lives. Um, so my mom was basically in like a hospice state at home, and then my dad, because of his injuries, they had to skin graft his quads, make a paste out of it, and like staple it. They stapled it to the whole back of his body, and he had to wear this like skin tight suit that was like a big band aid, which was horrendous, you know. So one day, my dad had enough strength. Oh, side note, my dad, like after he got hurt, it was like a PTSD. He didn't even know what PTSD was, but he thought he was supposed to die and did not. So there was this whole other psychological level of pain to go along with his physical pain that was just like crippling. I don't like, I don't know how someone could go through something like that and not be just completely crippled. So one day my dad had like enough like mental strength and physical strength, and he wanted to do something with us. My dad was like always like a doer. He always wanted to do stuff, have fun, be silly. So he had enough strength to take us to a local park in Chicago, and he ran into someone that he went to high school with,
Mm.
and they were just like kind of talking and catching up. And my dad, he was talking about his burns and this and that, and the guy asked, "Hey, is there anything I could pray for? Like, can I pray for you? Can like we do something?" And my dad's like, "No, like, why pray to something that is not real, doesn't exist?" Um, so the guy's like, "Well, is there anything I could pray for?" And my dad said, "Well, my wife's dying. You could pray for her if you want." And this guy came over to my house, laid hands on my mom. I had no idea what it meant or anything. I'm like 11 at this time now. So I was like maybe 10 months after all this stuff started happening. I'm like 11, 12, right in that area, right in that age range. And I remember coming home from school, and this guy was at my house. He was washing my dishes. He was walking my dogs. He was cleaning the floors. He was like making dinner. And I just thought it was just like a cool, like I didn't really know any of my uncles growing up. Um, I didn't have any older
You guys were
brothers.
really alone. Like
Yeah,
no grandparents, no aunts, uncles, cousins.
we had, so my mom had an aunt that we were close with, or my
Mm,
mom had a sister that we were close with, but she lived like far away.
got it.
But I never met any of my dad's side of his family
Mm.
until I was mid 20s. So yeah, so this guy's coming over. He's just hanging out. I thought it was really, really cool. Later on, a decade and a half later, I realized that like this dude felt the Holy Spirit convict him to be Jesus to my family. And there was no way that we were going to just confess Christ or want to have a conversation even. And so this guy knew like the labor of evangelizing sometimes, like serving people, like while Christ died for us while we were still sinners, not when we started coming to church. And like this guy had been like a great, like very applicable example of that. It was serving my family. It was a financial backbone. It was little things. It was teaching me how to play guitar. It was stuff like that. So my mom was verbally able to confess Christ as her savior. Jesus died on the cross for her sins. Um, and she was completely healed of cancer. Fourth stage non-Hodgkin's lymphoma disappeared from my mother without any treatment or anything else going on.
Treatment? None?
So she was done with treatments because they were like, this, like, we're not going, like, it's past that. It's kind of like enjoy the time that's left.
Got it. Got it.
So without any treatment, she went into remission. She
Crazy.
she grew her hair back. She grew all of her strength back. She grew all of her weight back. Um, and like me and my dad, we like it's hard for me to say this, but if I'm being honest, we like kind of made fun of her for becoming a Christian. I I was an angry little kid who never felt fully accepted, loved, anything. So I just made fun of my mom. There's just, I'm like 13, 14 now, like as like things are progressing. So she tried getting involved with the church and do some stuff. Um, and she just couldn't do it, and fun little side note, this guy who was like being Jesus to my family, one day he's just like, "Hey, like, this has been really fun. And like, I don't think I'm going to see you." And I never heard another word from this guy.
Are you thinking what I'm thinking? I
I don't
mean,
know.
Jesus says in the Bible that angels walk among us.
I've looked this guy up countless times. And like, maybe one day I'll run into this guy. And like, I can't wait for him to see like a harvest
Right.
from seeds
Right.
that like he planted. Like that's cool. Anywho, that was just a little side note. So this dude bounced, never saw him again. It's been over 20 years. I haven't seen him since. So my mom tried going to churches and try to live a Christian life. I remember her like watching like Joel Osteen on TV and like this guy's a whack. I still think that
True.
for the record. I don't know if I could say that. Yeah, I still think that. But my younger brother, Tank, spent the night at one of his friends' houses from school on a Saturday night. That kid's parents told my parents, hey, we can either drop Tank off first thing in the morning on Sunday, or he can just come to church with us. And my parents were like, well, we don't want to wake up early, so I just take him to church. And my brother Tank went to church, and he came home crying and was just really sad. And he said, yeah, church, they talked about families coming to church. And I looked, and everyone's sitting with a family. And I'm like, my brother was like 8 or 9 at the time. We're 4.5 years apart. So yeah, it was 8 or 9, maybe 10. And it was just really sad. He's like, well, how come my family doesn't go to church? And at this time, also, like, neither of my parents are working. Like, my dad is still messed up. My mom, like, it was just life stuff. So like, there was no income. There was no car. There was nothing. Okay. So I was living in a trailer park on the south side of Chicago. And so the family that my younger brother went to church with would come pick up my mom and my brother to go to church. And I'm like, there's no way I'm doing this. I'm like playing heavy metal music. I'm like trying to hang out with girls and drink and like steal beers from my friends' parents. And like, I'm just like a punk 15-year-old kid is what it is. And one day my mom came home from church and she's like, hey, next Sunday you're coming to church with me. I was like, there's no way. No. And she's like, okay, cool. Well, then pack your stuff. I'm like, I'm 15. You can't kick me out. She's like, watch. So
That's
my
a
mom
mom.
was like, oh, she was a fiery Sicilian
Chicago
woman.
South Side.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My dad always said, like fights are avoidable. My mom was always like, no, they're not. You fight them. So that's where I get like my fieriness from. My mom forced me to church kicking and screaming and was going to kick me out of the house as a 15-year-old. So I go to this church, and it was Living Word Church in Lansing, Illinois. Still to this day, still to this day, I'm friends with Dave Prince and their associate pastor, Andy. We used to call him Uncle Muscles because his dude's just a beefcake. So getting ready to go to church, I'm wearing like a tight Metallica t-shirt, or like a Slayer t-shirt, like something. Might have had like an upside down cross on it, or like a bunch of skulls, or just like the meanest thing I could find in my closet. And like ripped jeans, combat boots, basically. And I had all of these ideas of like how I'm going to dismantle what people are going to tell me. Someone's going to try to tell me Jesus loves me or God this, and I'm going to like dismantle it. And like, I'm so smart. Like, I got this all figured out. And I walk in to Living Word Church, and immediately this guy beelines right towards me. Okay. And he gives me like a big hug, completely, like, just my brain went for a full like loop, because at this point I thought like only dudes who like other dudes hug. Like we didn't do that. I didn't have the uncles. Like, it just wasn't a thing for me. Okay, which is funny because I'm such a touchy feely person now. But this guy hugs me and he's like, "Hey man, like I was just walking and like I just felt the Holy Spirit pull me and just say like God's like super stoked you're here, man." And I was just like dumbfounded. I was like, how, like so everything I thought I was gonna like one up these guys and like school them on, thrown out the window. I'm completely disarmed. Okay, and I enjoyed it. Met some people, talked to the pastor and like hung out. And like next Sunday, I wanted to go back, so we went back. Got dropped off at the youth group one like Wednesday night or something. Met the youth pastor and his wife, hanging out. This is like kind of fun. Like this, like it was very strange to me to be around a lot of people that like weren't swearing like crazy, weren't just trying to get drunk or like beat people up or like shoot somebody. Like, I don't know. Like just the normal of my life was just a lots of chaos.
Right.
Okay, so not seeing that, like my heart gravitated towards it. And it's like my rebellious stage was to like go to church, not the opposite. Like a lot of people's rebellion is to like walk away from church. but I lived that life and I was done with it. Like I had my fill and I was done. So we all dove into the church. My dad started working for the church. We all got baptized there. I started playing on the worship team. My mom's teaching in like the daycare, and like it's just my brother's getting plugged into like the junior high. Like it was just great. So for the first time in my life, I have a functioning family. It's not revolved around chaos and arguing and manipulation. It's, hey, like Thursday night they're doing this thing at the church. Let's go like help set up, and like, yeah, the youth group's doing this mission trip, and my mom's got to go do this. My dad's got to go help this person with their car, and like it was just like kind of how the kingdom worked, man. It was awesome. And then my mom started having a pain in her side again, and she knew that it was a familiar pain, and she went to University of Chicago Hospital, which was basically like my second home at this point, and her cancer came back. And it was like the doctors were basically like, when cancer comes back, it almost comes back with like a vengeance. And it's gonna be like really, really hard, and we're gonna do what we can to give you the most time with her pulse. And I'm like, well, that's I don't know what they're supposed to say in that, but that didn't make us feel good. Um, and my mom came home, and it was just like a why. Like my mom felt the healing of Jesus. My mom got better. And then when she started giving her life to the Lord, the cancer came back. And so um, there was a lot there, and like just real serious questions of like doubting things. And, I don't fault my mom because I have no idea what it's like to have cancer. I don't have any idea what it's like to question things like that. But the why is this here turned into like why God?
Mhm.
And why God turned into why did you do this, God? Why did you do this, God? Turned into how could you, God? So as my mom's health like digressed, so did her like longing to like pursue her faith, because she felt like what she had was like stolen from her again.
Right.
And then so they're doing clinical trials, they're doing radiation. They couldn't put a port in my mom, so they're doing chemotherapy again through her veins, like intravenously. And then all of her veins collapsed, and she developed like Raynaud's disease. So like all of her limbs, like blood couldn't get to it. So all of this like stuff. So it's just so hard. And church and the Lord is still the only peace and freedom I've ever felt in my life. So I don't want to not go. So then I'm now like battling my mom, who was going to kick me out for not going to church. I begin battling her to keep going to church.
I
You
just,
know,
it's so funny how, like, I'm reflecting back on what you said about, like, you lived the rebellious life and then you came to church and you were like, oh my goodness, I want more of this. And now life has completely flip-flopped where, like, the rebellion became going to church,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And like the way I grew up, which we'll talk about later, is like we grew up going to church, so it was rebellious if you skip church. And
hmm,
it's just so crazy how there's so many different paths to Christ, you know? And yeah, so the same mom who was telling you you're going to get kicked out unless you go is now the mom who's saying, nope, you're not going,
hmm,
just as quickly.
yeah. So at this point, like Living Word planted a church in Crown Point, Indiana, which I'd never heard of that before. I thought like, so we went to this church to do like a youth something. It was called Cross Point Church. It met on the square in a gym, and it was hip and like cool, and I thought I was in the country. I literally told my parents, I'm going to the country. That's what it felt like to me. Now I never traveled. I was never on a plane. I never went to the south, so it was south of Crown Point, so it was the country.
I mean, it is kind of country.
Yeah,
The edge.
especially like 15, 16 years ago. It
Mhm.
was no. Um, so I ended up meeting some people that were going across point, and we started playing some music together. Still playing music. and just started kicking it with these folks from Crown Point. And it got to the point where they were like, why don't you come stay with us? And like, let's write music. Let's like bring the good news to like the most broken of broke. And I'm like, I'll be right back. Like, I'm going to hitchhike home and get all my stuff and come back, which
How
is
old were
basically
you?
what 70.
Oh, so you were young.
Yeah, I'm still young. So yeah, 17, 18. Uh, I got everything I owned, which was skateboard, a couple of guitars, and a couple pairs of clothes. That was it. That's all I had to my name. Didn't have a driver's license, didn't have a phone, didn't have a diploma, didn't go to high school. I went back when I was 26 after I had my career and was married. I just got it to get it. Um, but yeah, moved out with literally nothing. Um, and like slept on these people's couches. And it's so funny. So like my wife loves hearing these stories because we're very polar opposite. She comes from just a sound family. And I don't come from a not sound family, but we have very different upbringing. So when she hears these stories and she's like, well, how did you eat? And I was like, I told people I was hungry. I don't know. And she's like, well, how did you get places? I said, I asked people for rides, or I'd walk, or I'd like borrow a bike. She's like, which like, it just doesn't compute with her. She's like, that is the craziest thing. So that's what I did for the majority. 18, 19, 20, 21. I bounced around people's houses and couches. I lived in a one bedroom apartment with six dudes. Yeah, like, cause I couldn't afford anything else. And I worked at Starbucks for a little bit. I worked at Jimmy John's. I worked every single construction job possible. Um, and was just like floating through life, basically. Okay. Now, in this time, my mom's cancer gets real bad and our relationship gets really bad. And also at this time, my younger brother, they find a melanoma tumor on the left side of his head. So I remember they cut it out. It was good. Caught it early, no big deal. But when they found out, like I remember talking with my mom, and she's like looking at me, and she's like, "How dare you still go to a church
Mm.
when your brother, who all he's seen his whole life was cancer and death, that God gave him cancer? She's like, how do you do that? How do you think what goes on in your brain where that's okay?" And I I didn't have a great answer for her. All I knew is that this is the only place I felt accepted, belonged, wanted, cherished. Like I was not going to leave Jesus. Like I was not going to give it up, and like that put like a pretty defining like wedge between me and my mom. And I um dealt with some addictions, dealt with chasing girls for a while, dealing with stuff, ended up going through a really gnarly split with Crosspoint, hotheads and offenses and pridefulness, and it was just a really rough time. Me being 19, 20, I was loyal to the people who were loyal to me, and I was a part of the people that left. And whether it was right or wrong that they left, whether they was true hurt there, not denying any of that ever happened or didn't happen, but I harbored insane amounts of like bitterness and anger towards Crosspoint and its leadership.
And
Um,
how did that feel?
at the time, I thought I was justified. I like my worldly brain came up with all of these things of why it's okay to be pissed off at them and why it's okay to think these things and why it's okay to leave there and like, no, don't go talk with them. Why would you go talk with them? They think these things about you. Why would you go talk with them?
Hmm.
And I let that fester for 14 years. yeah. And um, in that time, met the love of my life, got married. Um, my mom went to go be with Jesus July 23rd of 2018.
Okay.
So she got diagnosed with cancer in 1999.
Whoa. 19 years.
Yeah.
And
Um,
so when your mom says that all your brother knew was cancer, I mean, well, all you knew was cancer, really, too.
yeah. Yeah. Um, so that was really hard. And like, I had some like wrestling to do with God. And there was a lot of confusion. And the more I tried to make sense of it, the more angry I got. And like, the more I tried to figure out why God did this. Like, oh, well, maybe this and that and this. It just left me more. It just left me pissed off. And like I had to get to the point where it's like, God, I don't understand this. I don't know why my mom suffered and died like a rough death. I don't know. And I'm done trying to figure it out. I'm going to trust you. And that was the only way I was able to function, really. The only
Yeah.
way I was able to ever have peace. And like, I mean, some of the last conversations I had with my mom were were really painful. And I mean, she felt very hurt by me, like getting your cancer back. Your youngest son gets cancer, and then your other son still wants to be a part of this thing that you believe gave you cancer. So there was that. And then having cancer for that long, going through chemotherapy, radiation, clinical trials, a bunch of drugs, you like your ability to comprehend and like reason, logic is just eroded, you know? So like some of the last conversations me and my mom had were like, like basically like, F you, like you're not my son. When you need something, call your church.
That's
Yeah.
hard. I'm sorry, Johnny, that's hard.
Yeah. So
So in the midst of all of that, you met Chelsea.
yeah.
How'd you guys meet?
Um, so we met at a young adult group that met at Echo PC for college kids. And I somehow was sneaking into this. I didn't even go to high school, let alone college. So this was a college meetup thing, and I'm there hanging out. And I'm actually like not super proud of this, but my story, just myself. Again, not anything else. I was with a girl I was dating who I liked, go to this young adults group, and they're like, hey, why don't you guys take, the dumb like Christianese thing, and they're like, take 90 seconds and introduce yourself to somebody and like this and that. I see this girl sitting in front of me that's beautiful. And I tap her on the shoulder and in front of the girl I was dating, which I do not recommend. Okay, I don't, not good. Um, but I tapped Chelsea on the shoulder and I said, hey, my name's Johnny. I like your haircut. You want to see the tattoo I got today?
That's a pickup
Yeah,
line.
yeah. And she said, uh-huh. And I lifted my shirt up and it was a piece all on my, it was Romans 8:39, which is on my side. Um, and the girl I was with broke up with me.
As
She
she
did.
should have.
Yeah. And yeah, started kind of pursuing Chelsea, and I'm like, not gonna mess this up. Not gonna mess this up. This is a goodie. And um, our lives actually went different paths for like 4 years. So from when I met her, this is silly, but that day I met her was October 28th, 2010. I remember the exact day. Um, yeah, so it wasn't. It was, yeah, 4 years after that because we've been together 11 years, going on 11 years. But so I went off and kind of did my thing. She was doing her thing, finished college and all this stuff, which my wife is a genius. She is one of the smartest people I've ever met, and she loves to learn, and she's very good at learning. I didn't know learning was a gift but she is so good at learning and retaining information, which I so we make a good team. Uh,
That's usually how it
so
works.
yeah,
Usually you complement each other.
so then her car broke down in Crown Point. Okay, and she posted a Facebook status, and I'm sitting playing on my phone at work at the time, and I see Chelsea Keith name pop up and said, oh, my car would break down in Crown Point when I'm on my way to finals. And I'm like, all right, Lord, you broke her car down so I could come in and be a hero. I'm a knight in shining armor. I'm gonna come fix her car, and then we're gonna get married. Um, so I messaged her and I said, hey, what's going on with your car? Like, do you need anything? She goes, I think my timing belt broke. And I was like, props for even knowing what that is. That is amazing that you know what that is. And she's like, well, the tow truck driver told me that. Like, I didn't know. And I'm like, well, what are you doing tonight? Can I take you out on a date? And she's like, yeah, you can.
Oh,
And like, so her father and mother, who were like my father and mother, I do not call them my in-laws because they have loved and treated me better than I could have ever asked. And so they always told her no tattoos, no motorcycles. Okay, for a guy.
whoops.
My entire body is covered, and I show up on a bike. So I ride, and that was not a good conversation. Okay, and I went home and got my car. Chelsea's dad, who in physical stature was not intimidating. He was a smaller dude. Okay, and I've never been more intimidated in my entire life by this guy. I go get my car, Kristen. I go back to his house, and he pulls me into his garage, and he goes, "I have one question for you, and how you answer this is whether or not you get to take my daughter out." And I'm like, who does this guy think he is? Like, what do you like? What? Like, don't you know who I am? I'm a punk kid from Crown Point with a credit score of 416. Like, you can't tell me what to do. And he says, what makes you think I would relinquish the safety and protection of my daughter to someone who shows up to my house on a motorcycle? And I was stumped. I had no answer. And I said, Mr. Keith, I cannot think of a single thing you shouldn't. He taps me on the shoulder and he goes, it's a good answer. Have fun tonight. But
Whoa.
he just wanted me. And like, so that's how, with side note, Chelsea's dad also went home to be with the Lord recently, which is a whole nother other podcast part two. Um, but that was Bill's way of teaching. Chelsea's father was so good at teaching you how to think, how to learn things. Chelsea's father was very successful in what he did. He invented a solar powered attic fan that went to the moon, basically. He had a very, he invested in real estate. He did all of this stuff. And like, he had the like monetary value to just go give us money to go buy a house if we wanted. Okay. He could have been like, hey, here's $100,000 to go buy a rental property to do this stuff. But instead, Mr. taught me how to balance my loan to debt ratios. He taught me how to build equity into a house. He taught me how to cash out refinance. He taught me how to call up a private lender to convince them to give me a loan on a rehab with a good interest rate, and taught me how to do all these things. And now that he's not here, we're doing them. We are still doing them. But yeah, me and Chelsea have been married, going on 9 years, together 11 years. We kind of went on a tangent there, but
No, 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 you're good. Because I feel like it's important to fill the gaps in between. So
yeah,
you left Cross Point, you
yes,
met
sorry,
Chelsea,
yes,
and what did you guys do in between? If I remember correctly, you told me that you guys kind of were part of a more of a radical church.
yeah.
So tell me about that.
So we, um, which if any of them are watching this, I don't have bad feelings. Just let's talk. Let's talk. Um, no, yeah, we started a church. We were a bunch of tattooed hardcore kids in a band, We put out a couple albums, did a couple small tours, and like would play like bars and basements of places, just the nastiest places possible, and go bring Jesus to there. And so we were doing that for a while, and we're like, let's start a church. And we started this church, and we're just, none of us knew how to do it, but we all knew how to love Jesus. We all knew how to bring the good news, tell people about it. So this was very, very different from how Chelsea was raised. She was just raised at just like I don't know if I don't care. But she was raised at Bethel in Crown Point.
Mm.
Very traditional, straight lace, heads up church. She walks into this church, a bunch of tattooed guys screaming during worship and jumping around, and it like terrified her. She later told me, like, in the first couple months we were dating, she was praying to God, and she's like, God, show me if these people are nuts. Like, because this is crazy to me. And so we were a part of that church I was a part of it for 10 years. Chelsea and I were a part of it for 7 years. And it was a great hospital. It was a great ministry to brokenness, great ministry to darkness, and like sharing the gospel. And they did a lot of amazing things, and a lot of people, you know, got to experience Jesus for the first time in that place. And as we progressed in our marriage and started talking about kids, I felt very unequipped to be a father. Felt unequipped to be a husband on most days. And like what this church was really, really good at, it also had like it lacked in like other spots. Discipleship and like training and like really diving into God's word was not at the forefront of like this church's mission statement. As time progressed, we felt God calling us out of this place. And it was a very hard spot to be in because we knew God called us there. We knew we were supposed to be here. We're not just going to bounce because all of a sudden stuff's not what we like or it's not what we think it is. So we stayed for like 18 months after we knew we were going to leave, and which probably should have been more about 12 months, but we were like stubborn and didn't want to hurt people and didn't want to get misconstrued and stuff. And then when we left, it did hurt people. We did not make the process easier doing how it was.
Those kind of moves are
Yeah.
so hard, though. So hard. So hard. So after you left that church, what did you just kind of church hop for a while? Did you totally leave church? What did you do?
So in that 18 months of knowing we were transitioning out of our home church, we met a bunch of families that loved Jesus and were burnt out on the church. And we were doing like a table network church and like hanging out with all of these like just OGs families from Crown Point and getting together and reading the Bible and like living life together. And we met some awesome, awesome friends through that. And that was like one of the first experiences I had of like really diving into God's word.
Mhm.
And like that, which it just wasn't my forte. It wasn't the church I was attending to also. So after we fully left our home church, we bounced around to a bunch of churches. We tried like every church in Northwest Indiana, basically. And at this point, we have a 2.5-year-old and like a 6-month-old, and would like a church, but it was 50 minutes away.
Mhm.
And trying to get to a service in the morning with infants on time. By the time we get to church, we're just pissed off, man. Like we're just like, it's not.
And they're
It's
tired too.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I was what I thought in my mind, I was ready to be done with church. Not done with Jesus, but kind of how the like reconstructing your faith movement was like however long ago. This like new wave of like people leaving the church but loving Jesus still was very alluring. looking back at it now, the past hurts from Crosspoint, of holding on to bitterness and anger and letting it fester for 14 years. I realized the enemy was definitely using that to coerce me to not go back to it.
For sure.
Yeah. And so I was ready to be done. Yeah. I was drinking a whole bunch, which not good. Put a lot of stress on my wife, put a lot of stress on our family. I work crazy hours. I don't know what this is relevant to, but I'm a field technician for Caterpillar, so I work on heavy equipment. So that's full time plus. My wife and I also own and operate a real estate business. We own and operate a vending machine business. So doing all of that while trying to have kids for the first time and not being plugged into a support system and not talking to your family, and then my wife's father dying, and it was a very, it was a fun, not stressful at all, like couple years.
Not at all. No stress.
No,
No
no,
stress.
and I was just kind of just drinking a whole bunch and like being a turd. I'm being honest, that's what it was. And Chelsea was like, "Hey, like, I want to try Crosspoint." I'm like, "I've never been there." I was like, "Ah, cool. See ya. I'm not going." And this was like July of last year.
Uh-huh.
This was not long. I've not aged 10 years and grown wiser and all of this stuff. This was last year. And she was like, "You're really not gonna go?" And I was like, "Do you know what they did to me? Do you know what they said to me? Like, I'm not doing this." And then she gets the kids ready, gets to the door, stops, looks back at me. She says, "Are you using emotions by staying home, or are you using wisdom?" And I was like, "Of course I'm using emotions. I'm not using wisdom. Like, I'm pissed off. Like, I'm angry. I don't want to be any of this, that, or whatever." And I get dressed, put my shoes on. I like I was a part of the church. I know most of the people there still. I knew people from other churches there, so like it was very welcoming coming. Okay, and then the pastor, who I had my main beef with,
Mhm.
um, was preaching on wisdom, and he was talking about how God doesn't give us wisdom. God gives us opportunities in our lives to show wisdom.
Mhm.
And I'm like, "God, what are you doing? Like, I can't. What are you doing?" So immediately start getting like super convicted. Jesus is bringing up all this stuff from my past, and I'm searching my own heart, weeping in the middle of this church service. And people are like, probably looking at me like, "Look at this like tattooed junkie, like he's like like needing a fix." And no, I'm just crying because Jesus, man, like, uh,
Do you know how
so I'm
many
like,
people
"Sir,
cry at church on Sunday?
yeah, a bunch, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah." Uh, so I'm like searching my heart because this is so, and like I do not like Christian things. I don't know. So like when I would hear people say, "Oh, it was so refreshing," I'm just like, "Bleh." Like you just heard that from someone else, you didn't, which I shouldn't be that way. I shouldn't be judgmental because it was very refreshing to be at Crosspoint again. It was very refreshing to see people. It was very, so this refreshing feeling is awesome. So then I'm searching my heart and I'm like, what was my offense? What did I take up that made me leave this place? What was my, and I was kind of coming up blank and there wasn't much there. There was some offenses that other people had that I kind of piggybacked off of. Um, but I didn't really have anything. So the Lord's just like convicting. I just felt a Holy Spirit conviction. And I felt convicted to go talk to David and Beth right then and there. And pastors across them, whatever. Um, uh, right then and there. So I walk up to him and I tell him like, "Hey, like," and they're like, "Whoa, Jonny, it's so good to see you. What the heck?" And I'm crying. And they're like, "You good?" Nope. It's just like, being here is wild. I never thought I'd be back here. And I can't sit here and act like I am innocent. And they're like, what are you talking about? I told them right to their faces, I have been very mad. I allowed bitterness and anger to get the best of me. And I talked a bunch of crap about you guys. And I'm not going to sit here and enjoy this thing without you guys like hearing it from me. And I'm like, you want to kick me out of your church? That's cool. Like, I just need you to hear it from me. And I need you to hear that I'm really sorry. David put his hands on my shoulders and said, Jonny, we have always loved you and we've never stopped.
Talk about radical reconciliation.
Yeah.
That's what Jesus is all about.
Yeah. So then we go to a First Steps meeting and meet you and Dave, and we just a peanut butter and jelly type deal. And like you guys are talking about how this new church is like very different in a lot of ways. And I'm like, yeah, like how about how structured it is and like how there's all this doctrine. And you guys are like, what? And they're like, you're like, no, we mean the other way.
I
What?
mean, the other way. So when
Yeah.
you, so for those of you guys who, may not know a little bit of my background, Dave and I came from a pretty traditional church background. You know, one of the first things when we started attending Crosspoint, we're encroaching about 9 months now, was we were so
Full
used.
term.
Yeah, full term. We're full term. We were really used to like a service that like was legit 60 minutes. Like not typically 59 and a half or 61. It was like 60 minutes. And so that was the first, thing that was difficult for us was sometimes the services are this long and sometimes the Holy Spirit takes off and they're this long. And you have a typical structure where, we sing and this happens and there's announcements and there's a sermon and things like that. But Crosspoint allows for the Holy Spirit to intervene that if someone has a word or a verse or a testimony or a song, they leave room for that. And that's why they leave like, what is it, like a half hour in between services. And so coming from more of a structured, more legalistic, more whatever you want to say background and then going to Crosspoint, that was really out of our comfort zone. So we're sitting at this introductory, to find out information about the church with these two, and we're like, what are they talking about? And it was just so refreshing to come together. And it was just such a great reminder that at the end of the day, it's about the Bible and it's about Jesus and it's about what Jesus has done for us. And that there's a million different paths to salvation. Neither of us are going to sit here and say that my old church was totally wrong in the way that they do things, or Johnny's unstructured church was totally wrong in the way they do things. We're not saying that. We're not here to do that. But we were both just so struck by our differences. And so what I think I learned from you, Jonny, was that, you just gave me this whole new perspective of someone who's hurt from corporate church. Because I remember you saying when we first started talking about this, like you were pretty much done with corporate church. And you were like, I really don't ever want to go back to that. And what that did for me was it gave me pause that what am I doing to make people who walk in who are done with corporate church, or they don't know what corporate church looks like, or they might not wear the right things or bring the Bible or the colored markers or the know when to sit and when to stand, how can I be more welcoming to them? And so I just really appreciated that willingness to let in Dave and I, who kind of came from a little bit more conservative. And like you said, peanut butter and jelly. Like you could have had two different kinds of people at the same
Yeah.
table. So, you want to say any more about that, or did we kind of cover it?
Um, yeah, I mean, I just think if anyone is hearing this story and feels a stirring of like a wrong someone's done towards you and you feel justified in it and you feel like I have the right to be mad because they were wrong. Um, I would just challenge and encourage you to like really seek the Lord in that and not seek the Lord and like ask God to be your justice, not to seek out this Holy Spirit righteous vengeance, but just to seek the Lord and say, Jesus, how do I make you famous?
How do I
How do
make
I reconcile this? Because this is not of you. So if anyone's feeling that or anything comes to mind, you would be shocked what a simple conversation could do.
Yeah.
And second point is once we came back to Cross Point, the pastors were very intentional about seeking out reconciliation, not just like, cool, you're back. Thanks, we forgive you. Go serve in kids ministry.
Mm.
It wasn't that. It was, where have you been for the last 14 years? What's going on with your heart? I was losing your mom. I was losing Chelsea's dad. I was raising kids for the first time. What's your relationship like with your dad? How are your sister? Like all of these things to refill in um, refill in my life gave me like a sense of energy, like a Holy Spirit energy or faith to be very passionate about my relationship with the Lord again,
Love
you
that.
know, and like I got nothing but honor and gratitude to them for that. And it's pushed me and my wife and our beautiful kids in a wonderful direction of walking in like the wholeness or trying to walk in the wholeness and understanding that we suck and we need Jesus and we need to be around people who love Jesus, who challenge you and convict you and call you out when you're an idiot. So yeah, don't hold on to grudges. Talk to people. Seek reconciliation because it's worth it. You're worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that radical reconciliation. I think that's the perfect place to start. To stop,
Mm-hmm.
not to start, to stop.
Yeah, let's get it going. Let's start now.
That's podcast number 2. I think
Yeah.
we, I think we could talk a lot. Well, Jonny, I am so thankful for our new friendship, for being willing to, listen to some of our perspective, kind of coming. I just see like you said, peanut butter and jelly, like Dave and Kristen coming from more of a conservative, a little bit more legalistic, structured church, and you guys coming in and just, meeting in the middle, and because it's all about Jesus, right? And thank you for sharing your story of reconciliation, and I hope you guys are encouraged by it, because it truly, truly is worth it. And so,
Yeah.
all right,
Thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Love
Jonny.
it.
All right,
Awesome. Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.
bye.